Around the world, there are lots of buildings, park, station, and construction were abandoned, decaying themselves when nobody noticed. They represent some parts of economic and social development in human history. Let's take a look at those some of the most eerie buildings and what's their story about. Situated in the Tequendama area, this building was constructed in 1923 as an architect's mansion. It overlooks the amazing waterfalls on the Bogota River, constructed with exterior feature with visible French architectural influence, symbolized the joy and elegance of the elite citizens of the 1920s. According to the Musica myths, Bogota Waterfall was created by the gods to spare people from the flood. It symbolized the place of salvation. The name Tequendama means he who precipitated downward in the Chibcha language of the Muisca people. Musica were as advanced as the Incans and Aztecs. The Tequendama area was home to the Musica people before the Spanish landed in South America in 1500s with the weapon and European diseases. The Musica were unprepared and wiped out. Many of them were said to be raped, murdered, or forced into slavery by the Spanish conquerors. Legends has it, the desperate souls escaped their fate by jumping off the edge of the Tequendama Falls. They believed that their bodies would transform into eagle, freeing their souls and fly away. Several centuries later in 1923, the wealthy architect Carlos Arturo Tapias built this French-style residential mansion in the front of the dreadful scene. The mansion has housed many lavish parties throughout the decade. In 1928, it was transformed into Hotel del Salto, literally means Hotel of the Leap. Unfortunately, everything changed due to the Great Depression. Tourism and the hotel were dragged to the storm. There were very few guests visiting. The company was forced to close in the 1930s. There were some plans to convert the hotel into an 18-story attraction. However, the idea was never realized. One reason was the original structure has become too damaged to function due to the high level of humidity around the area. Another reason was the disastrous contamination of the Bogota River brought by the rising population and industrial development. In the meanwhile, some papers reported that the hotel was haunted. Several cases of suicides were reported. Many guests at the hotel claimed to observe strange apparitions. Others heard quiet, distant voice chatting in a foreign language. In the early 1990s, this once elegant, splendid hotel shut its doors. For more than 20 years, the hotel was abandoned and decaying in solitude. In 2011, the Ecological Farm Foundation of Porvenir and the National University of Colombia's Institute of Natural Sciences began a joint restoration project for the hotel, converted into the Tequendama Falls Museum, to preserve and promote the region's biodiversity and cultural heritage. On the Croatian island KRK north of Malinska sits the abandoned Haludovo Palace Hotel, camouflaged by the greenery, directly facing Venice across the sea. This 100,000 square meters resort was designed by the renowned Croatian architect Boris Megas. The spacious interior, modular shapes, asymmetrical beams, long monolithic pillar, incarnated a futuristic design, as if a film set for science fiction. It was aimed to provide an extravagant retreat for its guests. A lavish amounts of champagne, caviar, and lobsters were supplied as they sunbathed under the Adriatic sun. Legend says that the whole swimming pool was filled with champagne in one party. A little surreal experience, as much as the existence of this hotel, given that fact that it was 1971 in Yugoslavia, a Soviet Union country. Unlike other Eastern European countries under Soviet rule, Yugoslavia opened up the gate for foreign investments and tourists in the late 1960s. Even casino and gambling was allowed. American magnate Bob Guccione, the founder of Penthouse magazine, saw the opportunity, invested in the project. He believed tourism could open up communication between the Soviet Union and the rest of the world, removing doubts and ignorance surrounding the Soviet Union. 1 year after the hotel opened, Bob further invested $45 million, around $280 million in 2020, for the Penthouse Adriatic Club Casino. As the name suggested, the casino was aligned the theme of the magazine, populated by half-clothed penthouse pet hostesses, whose job was to assist the guests with gambling, ensure their well-being by serving food and drink. It was a luxurious destination by Eastern European standards. But the problem is, Yugoslavia is modeled on the principles of socialism. Yugoslavian national were forbade from gambling in casinos. It placed pressure on the casino to attract wealthy foreign tourists to be profitable. But it failed. The casino went bankrupt the following year and was closed. After the casino shut down, the Haludovo Palace Hotel continued to serve as a luxury hotel. And then came the civil war in Yugoslavia. The hotel became a shelter for refugees. Finally, the hotel closed its doors to guests in December 2002. With years of abandonment and neglect, the interior was seriously destroyed, glass shattered, piles crumpled, cushion torn, mattress are nowhere to be found. Only the cement walls and sunshine remain. This enormous hospital complex of about 60 buildings stands 30 miles southwest of Berlin, is already 125 years old. Built in 1898, it was originally designed as a sanatorium by the Berlin Workers' Health Insurance Corporation. From the beginning of World War I, the complex had become a military hospital of the Imperial German Army. One of its patients during that time was Adolf Hitler, who was wounded in the thigh by a shell blast during the Battle of the Somme as a soldier in 1916. The hospital had once become the largest treatment center in the world for lung diseases, especially those with fatal conditions such as tuberculosis. During World War II, it served as a military hospital again and was then occupied by the Soviet military in 1945. It remained a Soviet military hospital until 1995, well after the German reunification. Several attempts were made to privatize the complex, but not entirely successful. Some sections of the hospital become rehabilitation and research center. Most of the complex has remained untouched for nearly 28 years. It is the destination for the film set of The Pianist in 2002, Valkyrie in 2008. This massive construction was once a stage for a group of elite athletes to shine. Sarajevo Olympic Village is the hosting venue of the Winter Olympic in 1984. However, in the Bosnian War in 1992, Sarajevo was immediately put under siege. Just 8 years after the Olympics Games held, this naturally beautiful skiing venues had been damaged by the constant bombing and warfare. Skiing tracks, trails were completely destroyed, stadium became battlefield, hotels turned into prison and place of execution for Bosnian Muslims. The war lasted for almost 4 years and had led to 100,000 deaths. Around 40,000 of them are civilians. A wartime cemetery was built right next to the now renovated Zatra Olympic Hall. Since then, most part of the venue has remained empty, but peaceful. The Presidio Modelo was a model prison with panopticon design, commissioned in 1926 by dictator Gerardo Machado. It is located in the suburban quarter of Chacon, now the Isla de la Juventud, in Cuba. The prison consists of 5 circular blocks, with each block comprised of circle of prison cells and tiers, with a watchtower in central. The panopticon is a type of institutional building or system designed by the English philosopher and social theorist Jeremy Bentham in 18th century. The concept is to allow all prisoners of an institution to be observed by a single guard at any time, without the prisoners being able to tell whether or not they are being watched. Though it would be impossible for the central guard to observe all cells at the same time, the fact that the inmates cannot know whether they're being watched means they would act as if they're being watched at all times, hence compel them to regulate their own behavior. Bentham himself described the panopticon as a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind, a mill for grinding rogues honest. Bentham's basic plan was to conceive prison, but could be applicable to hospitals, schools, sanatoriums, and asylums, where schoolchildren, the workers, the patients, the insane, could be under surveillance constantly. Time after time, the person being watched is already programmed. Whether the guards watch or not does not matter, it still serves the purpose. Most of the survivors of the rebel attacks on Moncada Barracks in July 1953, including Fidel Castro and his brother, Raul Castro, were imprisoned there, most of them until 1955. However, Castro and the other rebels were not kept in the circular buildings, but were instead kept in the hospital wing. They treated the imprisonment as a revolutionary boot camp, congregating for daily lessons on politics and conducting secret communications with supporters around Cuba. After Fidel Castro's revolutionary triumph in 1959, Presidio Modelo remained in operation to hold political dissidents, homosexuals, counter-revolutionaries, and any other enemies to the dictator. By 1961, the 4 circular buildings were packed with 6,000 men, with a maximum of 4,000. Floors were filled with trash, running water, and food rations were sparse. The prisoners were only supplied with bare necessities of life. Riots broke out, and in 1966 they were permanently closed by the Cuban government. Today, the building serves as a museum and has been declared a national monument, but a sense of oppression and paranoia still radiates in these empty cells.